Hello and welcome to today's episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my absolute delight to be joined by the fabulous Jane Allen. Jane, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm so looking forward to our conversation. And as we found out on our previous conversations, we can get stuck into it quite quickly. So before we do, let me share a little bit more about you with our audience. So Jane is a serial entrepreneur and talent selection strategist with more than 30 years of experience helping business owners, CEOs, and senior leaders address a core performance issue: capable people who don't consistently perform. Earlier in her career, she trained under Stephen R. Covey, helping introduce principle-centered leadership into Global 50 organizations. She founded Smart Work Network, a boutique executive search consultancy, in 1999 and sold it in 2023, building her success primarily with entrepreneurs and small business owners on a discipline's science of selection process. Today, Jane leads Smart Work Assessments and is a global master distributor of the POP Predictor of Potential assessment suite. She's the author of the upcoming book, Turning Natural Potential into Performance, Restoring Responsibility and Accountability in the Workplace, which was co-authored by Dr. John Marshall, offering leaders a practical, data-driven blueprint for building responsible, accountable teams. I mean, Jane, where do we start? There's so much in there that you've done from kind of helping other organizations, building your own organization, and now building your second, and onto the book. Could you bring that to life for us a little bit, please?
Sure. Thank you for that. So yes, I'm old, so I've had a lot of experience now. I have gray hair, if you can't tell that. But so I became interested in this whole topic by doing the work, as we all do, and I spent a lot of years working with clients who struggled. Okay. I struggled myself when I started my business, this particular business. I struggled myself with hiring the right people, with leading them, managing them, even though I had all this great principle-centered leadership. I had studied all the leadership models and kind of thought I knew it. I realized that I didn't know it. And so I learned from my clients what they did well and what they struggled with. And most of them were entrepreneurs like me. Most of them were small business. I worked with a few large corporations. That's a somewhat different story. But in small business, we expect a lot. And so we when we don't get it, then we get frustrated, and sometimes our businesses survive on what other people bring to the table. We can't do it all. So I came to this conversation, if you will, in this book that I've been working on this whole year, not only with my own work, but with that of Dr. John Marshall, who is the developer of a suite of assessments and has been working with elite athletes his whole career. So it's really more about the things we've learned, okay, in the process I was in executive development before I was in executive search. So I've been around people trying to motivate other people, which is, of course, a misnomer because you can't really motivate people. But I've been around those of us who are trying to do good work and deliver on that work, and the struggles that we have with how do we get people to do what we need them to do in a way that leaves everybody with respect and leaves the people doing something they love. So it's a combination of both. So I come to this as much about my own struggle with finding my passion and being willing to put out the effort for that, as well as then helping individuals, candidates find the right role, and then helping companies find the right people. It's sort of a mixture of all those things that brings me to this. And I've just been doing it a long time. Many years.
I love that because I'm equally old, equally have grey hair, and I've been doing this a long time, and it so resonates. Over the years, I've tried to think how many people that I've interviewed for various roles, going from running big call centers all the way through to getting senior people, and it can be so difficult, can't it, to identify the right fit, and make sure. And I have to be honest, it's one of the worst ones. I went for one interview once, and I remember the guy saying to me, Kim, you've moved around a lot, and I mean a lot. So what confidence do I have if I gave you this job that you would stay?
Right.
And they went, that's a great question. Can I ask you, are you going anywhere? And he looked at me, he was like, I'm sorry. I said, are you going anywhere? And he went, well, I don't plan to. I said, then it's really high. I said, because I've never yet in my career left the person who recruited me, but I have left the person who replaced them.
Right.
Because we have those dynamics that throw in as well. So like you say, in smaller organizations, in more entrepreneurial organizations, you can't carry such a risk, can you? Because the impact is so great.
That's right.
So how do you help people to make that better decision at that first point, so that it's right for both parties? Because that's often where it breaks down, isn't it? Is there might be the skill, but is there a good cultural fit? Are the expectations really understood on both sides? Small businesses versus, I've done both. In big corporate, I remember going for an interview for a smaller startup, and he was like, when I say I want you to write the paper, I mean you. And I was like, no, I get that. I used to run my own business. I don't expect that I suddenly will open a cupboard and find a suite of people that do it for me. But those things can be a challenge, can't they? If you don't get it right in that first instance.
Absolutely, Kim-Adele. And that's a great story that I can certainly relate to in terms of when I first started my business and leaving people with, this is what we need to do. It was when websites, nobody had websites. And I said, we have the money to do a website. And about a week later, I came back and said, what have we done on the website? And people looked at me, you mean you really wanted us to do something? So and that sort of leads me into, because I was hiring people in my industry thinking I was in the people business. So I thought I needed to hire people in the people business to join me. And they were used to structure. They were used to people telling them what to do. They were not used to taking on the initiative. And I'm like, are you kidding? I'm giving you this money to do this, go do this. And was my first wake up call, Kim. Yeah. Who we are. And I say that when people talk about culture is whoever's running the show. I got to tell you that. Okay. I mean, it's whoever's running the show, whether it's the CEO is usually in a bigger company, is a department or a small, but when you're in a small company, I have to interview the CEO. I have to understand what that company is all about in order to be able to match the person, because the culture is driven by the person driving the vision. Okay. And so you may have a hiring manager, but that hiring manager, we have to look at them too. So to your point, how do we do that? First and foremost, we have to understand the culture and who that person is. Okay. We have to understand what they're trying to do. We have to understand what are the expectations of this opportunity, what are really required. And then, only then, can we match then to the right kind of person. When I say the right kind of person, I don't necessarily mean the experience. I'm talking about who that person is compared to who this person is. And we use a suite of this predictive assessments to help us understand who people are. Okay. Because we bring different levels, and we call it either self-management is a good term, but I call it responsibility, levels of responsibility. I'm willing to take on high risk things because I'm a high risk kind of gal. Okay. My husband doesn't want to take on high risk at all. He wants it to be orderly, process driven. And if you try to combine those two things in a small business, you're constantly struggling the tension between those. So how we have to do it, to your point, is we have to get clear expectations on the front end. What's really going to be required of this opportunity? What are the goals that I'm going to have to accomplish? And unfortunately, most people think it's about, I'm going to hire somebody with the experience who's already done this. Okay. And that is only a tiny part of it. And sometimes, honestly, hiring people who have the potential to do it, which is what my book is about. Okay. Is a better predictor of performance than somebody who has done it, but maybe not the level that you want them to do it. So we can't the job title. We can't say, well, just because this person's been a vice president over here in this, that they're automatically going to be successful in my company in this role. Does that answer your question?
It does, and that so resonates. One of the things that I always used to tell my team is recruit for willingness, because we can train for skill.
That's right.
What we need to know is this person is willing and able. They've got the passion. They buy into the vision. Because if not, just because like you say, just because you've done it somewhere else, in a lot of big corporations, people aren't given permission to be part of the solution. So they know how to respond to instruction. But when you suddenly give autonomy, you take away their ground. I don't know how to do this because I've had somebody else that's done that decision making. And it kind of leads me to, I hear often, and I wonder if you do the same, where people go, oh, nobody really wants to work anymore. Nobody's really that interested. And I question that, because I think people do want to do a good job. But what is the real premise of turning natural potential into performance? Okay. And why do you think so many business leaders are feeling the gap?
Yeah. So let's just say this, it's a perception, and some of it is real. Okay. Some of it is real. Not all of it is real. Okay. And I spend a good bit of time on the front end in my book. My first chapter is about, why do we even say this? What is going on in the world? The reality is we have some data over 40 years, what we call longitudinal data. And we show, as if we did this from 100 years ago, we'd get something different from then. But what we show is over the last 40 years, in reality, the willingness to sort of take on greater initiative and to be self-motivated, where you're intrinsically driven by your own motivation, and to take on that autonomy has actually declined, Kim-Adele. Okay, it's actually, we can see it in the results. Our assessment evaluates that, it measures that, we can measure that, and it actually has declined. Now, does that mean, to your point, that people don't want to do a good job? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means that through the generations, what has happened from parenting, the way people are parented, the societal things, technology, the things we've given up, we can go Google rather than having to go to the library and look something up. All of the reasons that we can all point to have created generations now of people, and corporations have somewhat done this, wait to be told what to do. Okay, I'm going to schedule your play dates. I'm going to schedule everything for you. Parents have done that with all good intentions. Okay. And schools have said, we're not going to really have any competition. We're going to kind of make it all okay. And again, I'm not getting into those, whether they're good or bad, but they simply have created generations now of people who are not, and the younger they are, let me say this, the harder it is, because they don't know what they're intrinsically motivated to do. They don't know, and they don't understand. Therefore, if we know motivation comes from within, they don't have it because they don't know what it is. This generation doesn't have the same value system. They're creative. They have all these other wonderful things, but they don't have what we call that habit of responsibility and accountability. It's not built into their DNA at this point. Okay. So my book is really about, how do you hire for it as best you can? Okay. And even though the workforce has this myriad, and I've seen it I've been recruiting for almost 30 years. And, the day when I could interview 10 people and get 4 to present is long gone. Now it's interviewing 100, 200 people to get 4 people that I can present to my client. Okay. So it has changed. So what do we do about that? Well, first and foremost, we have to understand people better. So we probably have to look at a lot more of a pool of people to get the people that we need. That's the first thing. We have to use tools that are going to help us determine. This is what I would say, we can measure for this. It's reliably measured, so we can measure for it. And then we have to look at the people we have and help them. That's really what it comes. If the baby boomers were sort of, the builders, all the corporations are still mostly run by baby boomers, for that matter. Okay. And as we get, we've got many other, high potential people building things today. Today, it's about developing people.
Yes.
Developing people, helping these young people who don't know, helping them find their own. We can't motivate them. They have to find the motivation. So some of the work in my book is about a little bit of my own, but Dr. Marshall's experience working with elite athletes and working with people, trying to help them become more self-managing, become more reliant. And the world needs that. It's not just work. We need people to be personally responsible in the world in order to have a world that we want to live in. You know?
That's so true, and it so resonates. My little girl's only 9, and I say to her all the time, like, our only job in life, the only thing we actually have to do is be a better version of ourselves tomorrow than we were today. If we do that every day, we're not to compare, not to look at anybody else, because we're not them. We can only look at ourselves and what do we do, and therefore it's about, if we get it wrong, we take accountability. And we apologize and we do something different. If we get it right, we can take credit for that and we can learn from it and see where we want to go again. I said, but we've got to go inward to come outward. And I think what so resonates in what you were saying is, when I talk to some of my clients, in fact, I was talking to one the other month, and he was like, "Oh, business is hard, Kim." And I was like, "Oh, go on then, tell me about it." I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm intrigued. Tell me more. And he went through this big list. He was like, "Well, I've got clients, well, they're people. I've got colleagues, they're people. I've got suppliers, people, business partners, people, the board, people, even regulators are people." I said, "What you've got is a people problem, but for years we've not really put much value on being good at people. We've dismissed any ability to engage with people, to get them to see their full potential, to get them to gain the confidence to step into the uncomfortable as being a soft skill." And it makes me laugh, because it's like, if it's such a soft skill, why do you all find it so hard?
It's not soft anymore. We say that it's a hard skill. Okay, it's a hard one, and partly the reason it's hard is because we come with some DNA that we develop from 0 to 16 years old. Okay, we all do, but nobody knows what that is. So I say, how do you possibly hire somebody and just know what they've done without knowing who they are?
Yeah.
If I know go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, and this I got you really excited because now it's in your book. But I guess this is why we use assessments and tools to help us to better understand, and all of it is data, and data just gives us more places to make decisions, doesn't it? But there are a lot out there. Why do you believe most of them miss the mark?
Well, it's not that they so much miss the mark. We like to say validated assessments will do what they're designed to do. Okay, so thousands of them. Okay, and I wouldn't say they all are, but the core ones are designed to do certain things. They're designed to describe who you are, to tell you a little bit about your personality style. All of those things are interesting and helpful in communication, in team building, those kinds of things. I've used those assessments myself. But when I started my recruiting business, I realized I had to know more. And so I went searching for something that would help me. And I didn't even know if it was out there, to be perfectly honest, because I had done a lot of behavioral assessments, personality assessments about your kind of outward personality. And I was a little bit of a junkie, to be perfectly honest, and really enjoyed, people like to know about myself. But I didn't realize until I really searched that there was a difference in how those assessments work. And the one that we use, and there are a few others, but not many, are focused on what's called a normative model. And that to just give you real simple versus with an ipsative. And I'm just going to give you the nickel version of that. So normative means we're asking you a number of items over that sometimes repeat in different ways. And you're giving us, this is more like me, less like me. So it's a mediated, response to something. So how you respond is not a no or yes or either or. The other types of assessments generally are, let's just say you have to, pick between, are you collaborative or are you creative? Well, which are you? Okay. You say, I'm both. Are you? So when you pick one, you don't pick the other. Okay. So they tend to pigeonhole you into, and so would get frustrated with some of these because I go, no, I'm good at that, or I'm good at that. So those are interesting, but they can't predict whether or not I'm going to do a good job. I can reliably perform in a certain job. Okay. So predictive assessment, where we're comparing and contrasting millions of data points over 40 years. Okay. We know that this many people responded in this way. We can position you and say, this is where the potential comes in. This is where your potential for certain types of job roles. And I use that natural potential. It's where your natural potential is. Okay. And if we can get into something that is natural for us, okay, then it's easy, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Multitasking is easy for you for some reason. You can do that. We talked about that. Okay. It is for me too, but it's absolutely not natural for my husband, who, if I give him a grocery list, we can only discuss that thing for 10 minutes, or he can't, and I'm going, oh, what about, he goes, no, stay focused on what do I need to get? Okay. So we're just different. We're just really different. So you take that and you multiply that by all the people that you're working with. Okay. So to your point, if we have this data about who someone is, who their natural, and what we're talking about is hardwired by the time we're in our teens. It isn't going to change. It just isn't going to change. Okay. Then we can reliably make decisions about how do I help this person fit into this role, and the individual can know it. Wow, I'm really good. We call that becoming consciously competent. If I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not so good at, then I can make a good decision about my career and be okay with not being great at everything. I'm really good at this. So one of the questions that I ask in recruiting, which always baffles people, after I've sort of dove into who they are, their experience, so tell me one thing, Kim-Adele, that you think you're better than most of your peers. You know how many people can answer that question? Almost no one.
Yeah.
I'll use trite things like, oh, I'm a servant leader. And I said, the last 15 people said the same thing. That's not a differentiator. So again, I'm looking for, do you know yourself well enough to be able to clearly show me that this is something that just is in your DNA? Okay? Yeah. And then if I say, give me one thing you're not as good at, okay, as other people. First of all, that's like deer in the headlights. I'm not supposed to say anything bad about myself. I said, this is not a trick question. I'm just trying to see, I said, I can give you 5 things I'm terrible. I don't do spreadsheets. I don't like numbers, So again, when we know ourselves, you used the word before, we become more self-confident. Okay. When we're more confident, then we can reliably do work that appeals to us. We can get into it. So it's knowing that who I is kind of that DNA, to be perfectly honest. I can work with that,
Well, I guess we have to know who we are. And so I'm only smiling because it reminds me of, I went for an interview many years ago, and the final question was, if you had to sum yourself up in a word, Kim, what would it be? I was like, I looked at her and I went, loud. And she looked really taken aback and she went, loud. And I went, you've known me for what, 55 minutes? And she went, I said, do you think I'm loud? And she went, yeah. I said, great. In that case, it's self-aware and it's honest. I'll stick with it. And she got me the job. She said, because in 15 years, you were the first person that didn't tell me you were highly motivated. You were very driven. You were results orientated. Exactly. She would go with something that could potentially be seen as a real negative. And I was like, well, on the assumption I was running a sales team, so loud's probably what you need.
Exactly. And that's what you just said is what we're trying, my real goal is for people to feel that comfortable within their body, in their who they are, because that's when you get real, is when we can just say, this is what I'm great at, but you know what? I'm horrible at this. I need other people to help me with this. That's when you really build a team, not saying, oh, I'm a this or I'm a that, but it's really, this is what I can do well. This is what I don't do well. How can we collaborate? That's true collaboration.
I know, because that is when teams really come together, isn't it? When you can go, actually, instead of recruiting people in my likeness, I need to recruit people that can fill my gaps and where I can fill their gaps, and therefore together we rise. I can't believe where time's going, Jane, and I've still got so much to ask. But could I ask you, what are the 3 most important mindset shifts that you want founders, CEOs, or HR leaders to take away from the book?
Okay. So really, first and foremost, that it really is possible to measure these hardwired traits, this DNA. Okay. We have tools to do that. And when you do, you have information, you have data by which you can make informed decisions. And then you have data by which you can coach people, you can help them. So understanding yourself first and then understanding other people gives you, as we just discussed, the substance by which you can make good decisions and really build your team on that kind of capability, that DNA. Then you build a culture of DNA. The second is, and this is kind of woven through the book, and I'll just say this, as we talk about restoring responsibility, and part of that is, as a business leader, not taking on the responsibility of others. Okay, we always do, but in fact, that's the very thing we're trying to teach. Is, somebody doesn't deliver, it's not your issue. If you've given them expectations, is these things. So there's a whole model in the book about how Dr. Marshall has used this in coaching, his coaching models. And, it's really about expectations and reinforcement. You expect of people, what they should do. And then you reinforce the positives and you don't reinforce the destructive behaviors that are there. And that's complex and it's not easy to do. But that is something that is the way we begin to restore that responsibility, is by giving it to the people who, in fact, it is their responsibility. Because we're really all personally, to your point earlier, we're all personally responsible and accountable for who we are. Okay.
And sorry to just interrupt slightly in that point, there was research done. I can never remember if it was Harvard or Stanford, so forgive me. But there was research done about a group of people that were constantly praised for output, so for success. Yeah. And then there was another group of people that were constantly praised for effort, so for iteration, for taking the risk and learning from it. And over time, the group that had been constantly praised for success underperformed because they became so scared of failure, because their identity and their self-worth was linked to their success, that they wouldn't try anything that they didn't guarantee that they were going to be good at. Whereas the team that were much more around that, it is that iteration, it's the learning, it's the willing to look at the parts that aren't going well and find a way to make them go better. They massively outperformed. And it strikes me from what you're saying, this is what it's going to be able to help people to do, is help people to not be scared of the failure, but be excited for the development, for the growth, for the what next. Would that be fair?
You've already read the book, and that's the third mindset. Okay, is coach for effort, stop coaching, managing for outputs. To your point, okay, you said it perfectly. Dr. Marshall says something. He says, results, when you're looking at results, it's too late. It's over here. Okay. So to your point, if we look at the actions people take every day and then help them and really encourage people to come to you and say, you know what, I'm not getting this. Can I ask for help? Really good coaching is about people asking for the help they need and being okay for, as a matter of fact, encouraging people to do that, to your point. So you just described the third and most important is really manage to effort. Okay. Coach to effort. Okay. Because effort is the learning. Oh, I didn't know I could do it that way. Yeah, this is a better way to do it. Let me show you. If you need any more help, let me. So, and that is very hard for those of us who've been taught to results, end of year, end of quota, all of that. And then people get so traumatized they can't do anything, to your point. Because it's failure. So those are the three mind shifts. That's it. You summarized it well.
Jane, I can't believe the time has absolutely disappeared on us. I've so enjoyed this and I've got so many more questions to ask. But before we go, can you share with the audience how they get in touch with you and who you help?
Great. Thank you. So they can get in touch with me on my website, or they can simply just email me at jane@smartworkassessments.com and just put in the subject line, authentic achievements. Okay. That's one way to do it. I do have a website called Smart Work Assessments. So there's also an info page there, but I'm absolutely happy and delighted for people to email me directly. And there, by the way, in the book, there's an offer for a gratis management assessment. So that's one of the great things. And if you want to get it before then, if you email me, we might be able to work that out. So that's one thing you can do. The second question you asked me is, what was the second question, Kim-Adele?
Who do we help?
Who do we help? So we help generally small businesses. Okay. We also help big businesses. I've worked in a lot of large corporations, so it doesn't mean we don't help them, but I generally spend my time with smaller businesses. Dr. Marshall, who's my colleague, however, works with 3,500 large global companies around the world. So we have both sides of it in terms of our team and who we can support. But so we help everybody, but it's focused on really around selection. We have some training programs as well. So, and we also have, and this is the next book, we also have a career assessment. So the long-term goal is also to help individuals, but that takes a little more effort because that's a much wider audience to work with. So
amazing. Jane, I've loved our conversation. I love what it is you're doing and helping people to understand themselves to enable them to step into their potential. I am a believer that every single one of us is a miracle to somebody. And once we understand that and we own it, then we can really make a difference in the world. So I applaud you for the work that you're doing. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing it with us.
Absolutely. It's been a joy, Kim-Adele. I enjoy the work you're doing, and I so appreciate having the opportunity to introduce this on your podcast this morning. Thank you.
Bless you. Thank you so much. And to everybody listening and watching, you found today's discussion as insightful, inspiring, and thought-provoking as I have. And until next time, take care.